And we have learned that listening is number one, and giving people a chance to have a voice, tell us what they think, and, make them feel a part of it can really make a huge difference.
Hello and welcome to Proud to Be You, the alumni podcast from Boston University. I'm your host, Jeff Murphy, and I am so thankful that you're tuning in. If you like what we're doing with the show, I'll ask that you take just 2 minutes out of your day and subscribe to our newsletter for bonus content and giveaways. You can do that now on our website at bu.edu/proudtobeyou. My guest today is Larry Freedman, the co-president and chief business officer for the Los Angeles Football Club. Larry spoke with me about his fascinating path from the Questrom School of Business to becoming an award-winning executive in professional sports, and how he helped build the LAFC from a mere idea into now being the most valuable franchise in all of Major League Soccer.
Proud to Be You showcases the journeys of some of Boston University's most interesting and accomplished alumni. Inspiring grads share the highs, the lows, and the challenges they have overcome along the way, from calm out to innovative careers. No matter where your path takes you, be proud to be you.
Larry Freedman, thank you so much for carving time out of your day. Would you mind just getting us started by telling us just a little bit about what your role is and the team that you are helping run?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. My current role is as a co-president and the chief business officer of the Los Angeles Football Club and BMO Stadium. The Los Angeles Football Club competes in Major League Soccer, and BMO Stadium is located adjacent to downtown Los Angeles in Exposition Park, which is also home to the LA Memorial Coliseum and a series of museums, with the George Lucas Museum of Narrative History coming online in the not too distant future.
Fascinating. I'm wondering, even before you were considering coming to BU, did you grow up as a kid dreaming of a career in sports? What did you want to be when you were a young person?
I did, but this was not that dream. I dreamed, like many young people, of being a professional athlete. I really thought that I had a shot at being the point guard for the Chicago Bulls, somewhere after the late, great Norm Van Leer and, before the Jordan era. But that didn't happen, and I really didn't have any experience, connection, visibility into the business side of sport, and I really never gave it a second thought. So it was dream to be a player, realize you can't be a player, move on.
Yeah. So how did you end up at BU? You grew up in the Chicago area, is that right?
That is right. I grew up outside of Chicago, Illinois, in a town called Skokie, and I ended up at BU. I was a soccer player in high school, and at the same time, back in the day, you'd get all the, physical mail from colleges once you signed up for the ACT or the SAT. Every college in America would send you catalogs and whatnot. And I got a catalog from BU at the same time the 1980 Olympics were starting. And Mike Eruzione and Jimmy Craig and Jack O'Callahan, Dave Silk were all on the Miracle on Ice team. So Boston University was in my mind when the envelope arrived in my mailbox. And then also somewhere in there, I got a call from the then varsity soccer coach, Hank Steinbrecher, about coming out and trying out for the team. None of that turned out, but it all made me interested in BU. And I also was a kid who felt like I wanted to get far away from where I grew up, do something different, not go to the University of Illinois or Wisconsin or Iowa or any of those Big Ten schools or the other state schools in Illinois. I wanted a little bit of an adventure.
Yeah. So the dreams of being a professional athlete are fading. And
Yes.
it's great that you come to BU. What made you decide to major in business? What were you thinking in terms of career aspirations at that point?
Yes. So also in there as a kid, I got it in my head that I was going to go to law school. And I didn't know any lawyers, had seen some television shows, had no idea what I was talking about. And that kind of carried on, especially caught some momentum when the professional athlete dream died on the vine. And I was in liberal arts. I was headed down a political science path. And my father sat me down and said, look, I know you think you're going to go to law school, but if you don't, what are you and a political science degree going to do for a living? So you ought to be more practical about it. And my dad ran a business, and it fell more in line, I think, with his vision than anybody else's vision. So I went with it.
Begrudgingly, or were you open to the idea of making that switch?
A 50-50.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed political science, and there was some tremendous faculty at the time. And I saw that path, but I didn't necessarily disagree with my father's practical approach.
Yeah. Tell me more about being a BU student. I always love to hear from folks. Where were you living on campus? Where were you hanging out? What were you doing
Sure,
outside of the classroom?
sure. I lived Warren Towers, Shelton Hall, a brief stint on West Campus, lived on Gardner Street, down from West Campus, and then finished it off down on Brighton Ave,
Yeah.
in Alston.
Yep.
And that was great because the zip code was 02134, like the old public television show Zoom, which was on way, way, way back. So I don't know that anybody listening to this is old enough to remember that, but it resonated with me. And then on campus, the student union, of course, great place to pop in, grab something to eat, do the Boston Globe crossword puzzle, the New York Times crossword puzzle. Back in the day, USA Today was a paper, do that crossword puzzle. And I don't know if it's still there, but you could typically find me in the evenings at Father's too.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Not
having a
still here. Not still here.
having,
But I'm
having
familiar.
a 75-cent 16-ounce not so delicious Knickerbocker beer on the student budget.
Fantastic. I
Yeah.
can imagine as a sports fan and an athlete, were you taking advantage of, going to games in the city? We got Fenway Park in our backyard.
Sure. First of all, BU hockey will always be, near and dear to my heart. Victory in the Beanpot on Monday, as good as it gets over BC. And I did spend an inordinate amount of time when the Red Sox were playing in the bleachers at Fenway Park, because back then, very affordable ticket, Fenway Frank, not that expensive. There was one season where the Chicago White Sox opened at Fenway, and it was easy to just go, 3-game, 4-game series. That was great. So definitely took advantage of the sports environment. And for a Chicago kid who grew up where home games were not on TV,
Mm-hmm.
it was amazing that the Bruins and the Celtics, everything was on television. Bob Cousy, calling the Celtic games. That was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. I love that BU hockey is something that you're still so passionate about these years later. And I mean, we have to talk about the fact that Mike Eruzione persuaded you perhaps to, as the university was gearing
Yes,
to
very,
build
very nicely persuaded. Yeah.
but as we're gearing up to build Agganis Arena, you end up making a incredible donation. Thank you very much. And now
Sure.
the Freedman family has a very special connection to Agganis Arena. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. I met Mike back in and around 99, 2000. I had been in the software business, We sold the company. One of the gentlemen running the deal on the other side of it knew Mike, and through discussion over dinner one night about where'd you grow up, where'd you go to school, where'd you used to work, I said Boston University, and he immediately said, you need to meet my friend Mike. Little did I know that it was the captain of the 1980 Miracle on Ice U.S. men's Olympic hockey team, and that he was working with another gentleman by the name of Mike Lynch, who eventually spent some time as the athletic director at BU, on raising money for the new arena. And I was put in a bit of a corner because the gentleman from Computer Associates, the company that acquired our software company, told Mike not to let me off the hook because he knew that he had just handed me and many other people some money. And so it was my pleasure to be a contributor to such a great project that has meant so much, and to the university and will for a long, long time.
And it's so interesting to think about the connection. Here you are playing a crucial role in building an incredible sports facility, and that's a theme that we'll come back to later in your career. But
sure.
One of the things I love to ask, BU alumni about was just their decision-making process around what are you going to do after graduation? You've got that degree. Where do you go from here? And so to that end, on this season of the podcast, we've actually got some students and young alumni who
Sure.
asking their own questions. And so we've got a question here for you from a current student.
Great.
Hello, my name is Yusuf. I am an economics major at the College of Arts and Sciences, and I'm proud to be you. And a question I have for the alumni is, what challenges did you have to overcome right after graduating?
So I had a number of choices. I don't know if they were challenges, but the puzzle was a challenge. As I mentioned earlier, I had always thought about going to law school. As I was coming to the end of my junior year at BU at the time, the graduate business school was doing a 5-year MBA program, and I had taken the GMAT, had done the application, and there was a notion of staying 5 years instead of 4 years at BU to get you get your undergraduate degree, but start taking graduate business school courses in your senior year and then stay the extra year. Then there was the notion of going for a joint MBA JD after graduation. And I think the challenge for me as a kid who was the first one in his family to go to college, I really trying to sort it all out and figure out what the right decision for myself was, with nobody to really lean on for the advice, was a bit of a challenge. I think, ultimately it was a high class problem. But I think just trying to figure out, do you go to work? Because there are people who will tell you, don't jump right into grad school. Go out, get some real world experience. So then whether you go to law school, go to get a master's, go to get an MBA, whatever that next degree is, you come with a greater world perspective than you would coming out of 4 years of going to class, sitting in the bleachers at Fenway Park, and going to Father's to drink dollar pitchers of beer. So I think that was the challenge for me.
Yeah. And I don't want to, in no way do I want to gloss over your legal career, but you decide to go to law school. Well, I want to get to the fun stuff about sports.
Sure.
So you do go to UCLA for law school, and then you got, 7 years later after that, you're already working as in-house counsel. A couple different firms, several different organizations. Tell me about the law career and at what point it was that you decided to pivot into sports management.
Yeah. So I think this is what happens when, you're an 8-year-old kid and you declare that you're going to go do something and you have no idea why, and then you go do it. And I think law school, though there are some programs and parts of some curriculums that have tried to focus on more practical application so that students have some better idea of what they might be getting themselves into, when I went to UCLA for law school, it was school, and it really provided no insight into what was on the other side of getting your degree, passing a bar exam, and practicing the law. And so, similar to my really well thought decision to go to law school, I interviewed for a bunch of jobs, got offered a job at a firm that then was called Rudnick and Wolf, that has since merged and acquired and merged and acquired and has become DLA Piper, which is one of the largest firms on the planet. I got offered the job, was so excited, said thank you, hung up the phone, and then realized that I needed to call back and ask what department. Am I going to be a courtroom litigator? Am I going to be a real estate lawyer? Am I going to do business transactions? Am I going to be doing wills and estates? And I called Karen Englander back and said, hey, I have a follow-up question. Where are you putting me? And she said, oh, you have a business degree. We'll put you in the corporate department. So kind of just, sort of fell into law school, fell into the practice of law in the corporate department at a large firm, and knew fairly quickly that this was not the long-term place for me. I think it is not too aggressive to say that if we got 100 big firm lawyers in a room, more than half of them would tell you they would love to find another job. So, just not the environment for me. Billing hours, keeping track of your time, that's kind of a finite model. There's only so many hours in the day, and you're supposed to be billing hours to clients, out romancing, wining and dining new clients, doing some pro bono work to make the world a better place. And there's just so many hours in the day. So I felt like there was probably something more interesting for me. And that led me to become an in-house counsel. So instead of being a hired gun on a project that you really don't have context for, how does it all fit into the bigger picture? Why is the client doing this? What does the client think this will do to improve their business, take them to the next level? And oftentimes the unanswered question of, why does this have to be done by midnight on December 31st and I can't go out on New Year's Eve? Why? So the opportunity to become an in-house counsel was attractive because then you're more on the team. You're not just a hired gun.
Yeah.
And so that really made a big difference for me.
Sure. So then you're working in-house counsel for a while, but in 2006, it appears, looking at your LinkedIn history, you make another massive change and head out west to LA and start working in minor league baseball. Yes.
So I had reached a point in my career and my life where a couple of things. Wanted to get back to California, had enough of, Midwestern winter, not that different from New England winter. And also was at a point where I was ready to try something different in my career. And, here's a plug for everybody listening who's a student: network. Even people who are out in the working world, network. A guy that I worked with when I first got out of school at Rudnick and Wolf had moved out to California, had gotten out of the law, became a business person inside Disney, then ended up at Fox Sports. And when I told him I was thinking about getting back to California, he introduced me to a guy who was working with Peter Guber, the movie executive, in minor league baseball. And the next thing you know, I'm packing it up and we're moving to Hollywood to work in minor league sports.
Yeah, and you do that for, it was like 8 years you're working in minor league baseball?
Yeah, it was 2006 through about 2014. We had a portfolio of affiliated minor league baseball teams all over the country. We had a couple of joint ventures with the New York Yankees. We had a team in Dayton, Ohio. that was an affiliate of the Cincinnati Reds, the Frisco Rough Riders outside of Dallas, affiliate of the Texas Rangers, and had a AAA team in Oklahoma City. And we had an investor who had a time horizon that had expired. And so we sold that off. My partner, Peter Guber, had since gotten himself into the ownership group of the LA Dodgers. So we put together a group of people that went into a 50-50 joint venture with the Dodgers to acquire the AAA team in Oklahoma City, kind of from ourselves, and rebrand it the Oklahoma City Dodgers. But at the same time, Peter had gotten into the ownership group with the Los Angeles Football Club, which
Right.
at the time was just an idea, and some people who had written a relatively large check to acquire some expansion rights to Southern California in Major League Soccer.
So how do you get pulled into the LAFC?
So for the better part of 2 years, because we're, slowly but surely shedding the assets from the minor league baseball business, Peter would stick his head in my office, and Peter is from Boston and has a pretty pronounced accent. And he would say, I might do this soccer thing. I don't know. Don't know anything about soccer. Might be a good idea, might be a bad idea. But if I do it, there might be something for you to do. Mm-hmm. So in October of 2014, they did it. And 3 people showed up at the Mandalay Entertainment offices where the minor league baseball company was headquartered. And one of them was, 2 of them were co-founders of the Los Angeles Football Club. Another was the first employee, Alice Shing, who had a 15-year career or so at the Los Angeles Clippers and was crazy enough to walk away from that and jump into this startup MLS enterprise. And, we got to talking, and, I had experience from minor league baseball of identifying stadium sites, helping to design ballparks, and, building season ticket holder bases, finding corporate partners, building staffs, etc. And that was, part of what this new organization needed. So it fortunately was a fairly seamless transition.
Yeah. So 2014 is what you're immediately named as co-president and chief business officer?
No. I came on I started out doing some legal stuff and some business development stuff, and then ended up overseeing all of the business. So became the chief business officer somewhere in the early days. And then in COVID, or during the pandemic in 2020, our original president left to pursue a business that he had started. And the managing owners kind of turned to me and said, well, somebody needs to run this thing, so might as well be you. And we created an interesting but productive structure where we have 2 co-presidents, because at the time, John Thornton, who was our general manager, and we were peers, and we had always worked together. And we felt that it would be a little bit odd if he reported to me or I reported to him. So we created this co-president structure where, he focuses on players,
right,
and that side of the business. I focus on the business of the business, but, these things are inextricably intertwined and cross paths all the time.
This April, join Boston University for Global Days of Service. A month of volunteer opportunities bringing alumni together to make a difference in our local communities across the globe. Join a volunteer group or start your own project at bu.edu/Global Days of Service.
I was fascinated, it took a little reading on my part to realize the team is founded in 2014, but doesn't actually play a game until 2018. So it's 4 years of you building this business. And you're centrally responsible for a lot of that building, and literally the building, correct? I mean, you mentioned you had a lot of experience in building stadiums. Tell me a little bit about what goes into those 4 years. You're striking
Yeah,
these major partnerships,
sure.
all of those things.
Yeah. So we, in October of 2014, we have 5 people and a piece of paper that says we're entitled to find a place to play, pick a place to play, whether we build it or we become a tenant somewhere in LA County or Orange County. And Peter, through other experiences, both in the movie business as well as in minor league baseball, would always say you only get one chance to say hello to a market, and you better make it good. And so while we could have said, all right, we'll play in the 2015 MLS season and we'll go to the Rose Bowl, or we'll go to the LA Memorial Coliseum, or we'll find somewhere else. We knew that ultimately we were going to build our own venue, a soccer specific venue that was multi-purpose and also could do concerts, but primarily designed for global football. And so we took the path that said, we're not going to say hello until we're ready. And so the first order of business was to decide where to go. Do we go to Newport Beach? Do we go to Long Beach? Do we go to Ventura? Do we go out to Oxnard, Woodland Hills, wherever? Ultimately, we landed on the site of the old LA sports arena where the Clippers had played, the Kings had played there. Will Ferrell filmed Blades of Glory there. And it was available, and it had been pre-entitled for a 22,000 seat soccer specific stadium. And that pre-entitlement was really, really helpful to the timeline, see the effort that my friends at the New England Revolution have been going through to try and find a site in and around Boston to build a similar venue. So we landed on the site. Then we had to design a building. Once we designed the building, we had to start building a fan base. We had to start building a ticket holder base. And we needed to find some corporate partners. And we need to build a staff. And so during that time, October of 2014 through March of 2018, when we first kicked the ball, and then April 29th of 2018, when we opened our stadium, there was all of that work going on, call it behind the scenes, to get ready to say hello.
Yeah. And, we're fast forwarding here a little bit now. It's fascinating to hear your strategy behind that, because now you've got All-Star ranked your stadium like number 5 in its list of top stadiums, at least in the US.
No, it's top outdoor venues in the world.
The world.
For
Thank you.
concert ticket revenue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not only that, but now you also oversee the business operations for the most valuable franchise in the MLS. You were the first team to be valued over $1 billion. You've got, I think the last year you had $9 million of operating profit, when half of the entire MLS teams are not even profitable. That you must feel a lot of pride in what you've built there.
I am exceptionally proud of what this ownership group, what our staff, people who are here, people who were here and have gone on to do other things in sports and, other industries. Because, you think back, we've talked about 2014. And at the time, I would say the majority of the experts, pundits, and people on the street thought we were crazy, because we were coming into a market that had arguably the most successful club in MLS history. The LA Galaxy, everybody knows that was Beckham's team. It was Landon Donovan's team. They were the first team in the league to win 5 cups. And, the brand awareness was significant in the market. And then when you talk about the market, there were 2 of everything when we decided to do this other than NFL teams. And then within a very short time span after we decided to do this, the Rams came back and the Chargers decided to move north. So 2 NFL, 2 NBA, 2 MLB, 2 NHL. You had the LA Sparks in the WNBA. We now have Angel City Football Club in NWSL. You've got quasi major league level sports, USC football, UCLA football, basketball, all the other programs at those schools. You've got all kinds of minor league sports. You've got theme parks. You've got the Hollywood Hills to go hike in, the beach. So, both trying to get people's attention and get their time to actually be a part of it, be a fan, watch it on Apple TV, buy a shirt, buy a jersey is not easy, especially in this market. And so, to see how far we have come when there was a lot of naysaying is pretty gratifying. And then, a year ago, Forbes put us at $1 billion for the first time any MLS club was ever valued at that level. And, to see the success we've had on the soccer pitch, 2 supporter shields, 5 playoff appearances in 6 years, 2 Western Conference titles, an MLS Cup, 2 Champions League finals. And then to see what we've done in the community, right? One of the reasons we all got involved in this was to be a force for good in and around greater Los Angeles. And whether it's a person at a time, a community at a time, an organization at a time, we're trying to make the world a better place. And that's really, really important to us. So we're proud of that. And then the business results are also something that we're very, very proud of, but we like to say we're just getting started. A little bit ago, we formed a joint venture with FC Bayern Munich, which is one of the biggest brands in global football, to develop a global network for the development of young talent, both on the pitch and on the technical side of football operations. So, that one's just getting started, but next thing you know, we are not 5 people in an office trying to figure out where to put a building, but we have interests in clubs in Austria, Switzerland, Uruguay, a youth development academy in Africa. And we're just, like I said, we're just getting started.
Yeah. One thing I did want to ask you about as you're reminding me of some of the amazing success you've had was when and I know that you're asked all the time to speak to young people about careers in sport management, etc. But it occurs to me that everything that you just said about building community really rings true. You've got these incredible fans who I think is the sellout streak continuing? You had at least 5 seasons of every home game was sold out.
Yeah, other than those games that we played with no fans or a socially distanced crowd with seats zip tied in the upright position.
Yep.
Yes.
So not only that, but you had fans involved, I read, from the very beginning, from down to things like this, not only the stadium design, but the team colors and all these kinds of things that speak to culture. When you give people advice about careers in sports management, what's your advice around building that successful culture? I can only imagine how many employees fall under you now. You're creating this community that people feel passionate about. How are you doing that?
Yeah. So I think we have tried to build a community and to be collaborative about it. And we do that inside the club, and then we do that outside of the club. So, for example, with our fans, and we wanted to create something. This is why we thought we could do what other people told us we couldn't. We set out to be authentic to the global game and build a community and a fan base like you would see in South America, in Europe, and everywhere else where the beautiful game is the sport, not a sport, but the sport. And to do that, we felt the right path was to co-create. And among the things we did to co-create the club was, in the early days, we actually hired a guy, Patrick Avila, and his job was to go out and just talk to people about football and ask, Jeff, what do you love about football? Who's your club? Why do you love that club? Would you be interested in being part of a club here? And what would it take? What would resonate with you? And ultimately, and we never tried to sell anybody anything, right? We would go to bars where global football was on, or the U.S. men's national team was playing in the Gold Cup or whatever, and just talk. And we wouldn't ask you to buy a ticket. We wouldn't try to put you on a waiting list. We wouldn't try and sell you a hat or a scarf. All we would ask is, if you're interested in learning more, give us your email address. We'll let you know where we're going to watch another game another day. And ultimately, that led to, we were designing our stadium, and we had some great architects at Gensler who had designed buildings and sports facilities all over the world. And we had some pretty renderings about what we thought we wanted to build. But before we locked in, we took a group of our supporters, our most ardent fans, to our architect's office and said, hey, here's some pretty pictures of what we think we want to build. What would you do? What would you want? And, the living, breathing embodiment of that, or the result, is safe standing in the north end of our stadium. And up above that safe standing section is a supporter bar, because that was something that they also wanted. And so we've tried to take that approach with, as much of what we do as possible. And we have learned that listening is number one, and giving people a chance to have a voice, tell us what they think, and, make them feel a part of it, can really make a huge difference.
I'm really, really thankful you took this time out of your day. I'm a born and raised Massachusetts sports fan, and I've been indoctrinated in such a way that I think I'm never supposed to root for anything that comes out of LA. But I got to tell you, I'm certainly rooting for you, and maybe even I'm rooting for the LAFC a little bit this season. But thanks so much. It was great to have you.
My pleasure. And the door is open anytime you find yourself in the City of Angels. Come see us. We'd love to give you an experience at BMO Stadium.
Careful what you wish for, because I'm probably going to take you up on it someday.
Do it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Larry.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Larry for joining me on the podcast and for his incredible support in naming the Freedman family penalty box at Agganis Arena. I know next time I'm in Los Angeles, I hope to be taking in an LAFC game in yet another incredible sports facility that he had a hand in building. If you heard something today that makes you proud to be you, I hope you'll join me in donating to the BU cause that means the most to you at bu.edu/give.
Thanks for listening to Proud to Be You. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your episodes. Proud to Be You podcast is produced by Boston University and our partners 5 Tool Productions, a BU alumni-owned, Boston-based company specializing in video production, live streaming, and content marketing. Our theme from Artist.io is Think About Lights by Ben Fox. All additional media in this episode has been shared by our guest. To learn more about Proud to Be You, visit bu.edu/proud to be you.